and welcome to our Bible study on the Ten Commandments, where in each lesson we will look at a different commandment, a word that's going to help guide our discussion and give better clarity into that commandment, and some points to consider as we live our lives. The commandment we're going to look at today is the Sixth Commandment: you shall not commit adultery. Now, this is the commandment nobody wants to hear somebody talk to them about. And as a child or as a kid, if you're going through confirmation, when the pastor gets to this commandment, everybody always gets a little bit uncomfortable because you're talking about the marital relationship or the sexual relationship between people. It makes people very, very uncomfortable because of how prevalent the idea of sex and the idea of different types of relationships are in the world around us. When God called the people out of Egypt, when he freed the Israelites from Egypt and brought them into the promised land, he specifically wanted them to have a system where they honored one another and that they were not going to kind of engage in adulterous relationships. Many of the gods that were worshipped in the surrounding areas had some type of sexual nature attached to them, and it was very destructive to the way in which they viewed one another. So God wanted to protect his people from having those ideas and the slippery slope that would lead them away from their covenant relationship with one another and with also God. And so our guide word is that word covenant, because it speaks to the greater idea of the covenant relationships that we have in our lives. The marital relationship is one of the building blocks of understanding how covenants work in our world. If we honor the marital relationship, the covenant relationship we have as husband and wife, it's going to give us better clarity and better guidance in trying to honor the covenants that we make, whether it be in business or in other aspects or other areas of our lives. And so a few points to consider as we look at this commandment. Number one, the grass is always greener on the other side of the covenant. The grass is always greener on the other side of the covenant. Sometimes we get into covenants that we wish we had not, and we will try to do anything that we can to get out of those covenants because we always see something better. But the idea of covenant, whether it be the marital relationship or a business agreement, is that we are to honor the covenants or the kind of agreements that we have made with other people. And there is no greater agreement when we make between husband and wife because we are standing before the altar of God when we make those covenants. And we're inviting and asking God to watch over and to guard those marital or covenant relationships. And so we have to understand how easy it is to think that the grass is always greener on the other side of the covenant and how we wish we could get out of them. But if we want to be honorable people and we want to follow God's word, we need to honor the covenants, whatever they might be in our lives. Number two, the covenantal marital relationship calls us to better speech. How many times have you seen, whether you're male or female, husband or wife, that you get around other wives or you get around other husbands if you're a guy, and people start talking about what they don't like about their marriage, or my husband is this, or my wife does this, or that and that and that and that, and you start to see all of these things that they're complaining about in their marriage. What is it going to do to you? It's going to cause you to want to examine your marriage and maybe think of the negative side of things as opposed to all of the positives that we find between husband and wife. So I believe that this commandment, when we think about it and we think about the covenantal nature of the marital relationship, it should call us to better speech. When we're around other people, we should seek to always support our husband or our wife. We should seek, when we make other covenantal relationships, other business agreements, we shouldn't behind the back of somebody else or somebody that we're in a relationship with. We should not go behind their back and start talking bad about them, no matter who they are or what they might be doing. We want to honor the people that we have made covenantal relationships with because we understand that it is going to benefit us when others succeed or the covenant relationship or agreements that we have made succeed. And point number 3, the covenantal marital relationship calls us to examine all of our relationships. When we become husband and wife, we need to examine the relationships that we have with others. And we need to understand that in each of those relationships, there becomes a possibility that it may interfere with our covenantal marital relationship. And so we must always guard ourselves so that we can guard those who are closest to us. And sometimes we may have to disassociate ourselves from other people who may be destructive or seeking to be destructive against us or the covenantal marital relationship that we have entered into. We must always seek, once we have entered into that covenant, the highest good for our spouse. And so I hope this discussion has given you better clarity and insight into this commandment.